Have you ever wondered about the mysteries the skies hold? Those inexplicable disappearances that leave us without answers, questioning the limits of our understanding. Today, we're diving into one of those enigmas, a case that defied logic and reason, and that still echoes in the corridors of aviation history. Get ready to unravel the story of Flight RG-967, an aircraft that simply vanished into thin air, leaving no trace. On that fateful day, a Tuesday marking the end of January 1979, Narita Airport in Japan witnessed the departure of an aircraft that would become an indecipherable enigma. Flight RG-967, a cargo transport operated by Varig, took off toward an uncertain destination, sealing its fate for complete disappearance. The Boeing 707, identified by the prefix Papa Papa Victor Lima uniform, left the Japanese soil at 8:23 p.m. local time on a journey that included a stopover in Los Angeles, in the United States, before continuing to Galeão Airport in Rio de Janeiro. The estimated time of arrival on Brazilian soil was scheduled for the afternoon of the following Wednesday. The aircraft, which had already been in service for 13 years, was under the command of the experienced and respected Captain Gilberto Araujo da Silva, the same pilot who, 6 years earlier, on July 11, 1973, had been at the controls of the tragic Flight RG-820, also operated by a 707, prefix Papa Papa Victor Juliet Zebra, which disintegrated near Paris, claiming 123 lives. Captain Araujo miraculously survived that catastrophe. On that day, as part of the crew of RG-967, in addition to Captain Araujo, were Captain Ernie Peixoto Milius, 2 co-pilots, Antonio Brasileiro da Silva Neto and Evan Braga Saunders, and 2 flight engineers, Nicola Esposito and Severino Guzmão Araujo, the latter with no family ties to the captain. The Boeing was carrying the maximum permitted takeoff weight, 151 tons, with a peculiar cargo, 153 works of art by renowned painter Manabu Mabe, recently completed from an exhibition in Japan, valued at over $1 million at the time. On board, there were also other goods and the necessary fuel, supplementing the 707's maximum weight capacity. In Los Angeles, Captain Araujo would hand over command of the 707 to a new crew who would take over the non-stop flight to Rio de Janeiro. Witnesses to the aircraft's takeoff in Narita did not notice any abnormal behavior. It departed normally. That would be the last time the Papa Papa Victor Lima uniform would be seen. 22 minutes after takeoff, the captain made contact with the Narita control tower without reporting any setbacks. A second contact was scheduled for 9:23 p.m., but it never materialized. Faced with the silence of the aircraft, one of Narita's flight controllers tried insistently to establish communication. After an hour of failed attempts, the alarm was raised. The Varig Boeing 707 had disappeared. The search and rescue plan was activated, but the darkness of the night prevented any immediate action. The searches could only begin the following morning. Despite all efforts and more than 8 days of exhaustive searches, no trace of the aircraft was found, neither debris nor the bodies of the crew, who were never located. Until then, no jet aircraft had simply vanished without a trace. Various hypotheses were raised about what could have happened to the aircraft. A sudden explosion on board could have incapacitated the crew, preventing them from sending even a brief emergency message. In this scenario, the aircraft would have plunged into the sea without control, scattering debris over a vast area. In cases of uncontrolled falls, it's common for numerous traces to remain on the sea surface, such as oil or fuel slicks, plastic fragments, the aircraft's structure itself, and even human remains that do not always sink immediately. If there was some other, less catastrophic problem that did not prevent the continuation of the flight, there would have been enough time for the crew to send some alert. However, nothing was picked up on the ground, nor by the various aircraft flying through Japanese airspace, a location with heavy traffic at that time. Gianfranco Betting, current marketing director at Amaro Aviation and a prominent figure behind the defunct JetSite website, presents two cases of anomalous accidents that may shed light on the enigma of RG-967. The first case dates back to 1999. A Learjet 35 departed from Florida for a 2-hour flight to Dallas in Texas. The crew silenced communications with the ground, leading 2 U.S. National Guard fighter jets to intercept the Learjet. The fighter pilots reported that the aircraft windows were covered with a thin layer of ice and the pilots were dead, still strapped into their seats. The aircraft, remaining in autopilot at 14-kilometer altitude, crashed 5 hours later in the state of South Dakota when the fuel ran out. Investigations by the American National Transportation Safety Board pointed out that the probable cause of the accident was the incapacitation of the crew due to an abrupt depressurization of the cabin caused by a defective adapter in an air escape valve. On August 14, 2005, a Boeing 737-400 from a Cypriot company, Helios Airways, took off from Larnaca, Cyprus at 9:07 a.m. for a short flight to Athens in Greece. At 9:37 a.m., the aircraft entered Greek airspace without making contact. Greek controllers contacted their colleagues in Cyprus, who informed them that the pilots had reported problems with the air conditioning shortly after takeoff. Several attempts at contact were made, but without response. At 10:55 a.m., 2 Greek F-16 fighter jets took off to intercept the Boeing. Visual contact was made at 11:20 a.m. The Greek pilots, flying a few meters from the Boeing, observed a terrifying scene. There was no one in the captain's seat, and the co-pilot appeared unconscious over the yoke. The F-16s continued flying close to the 737, which maintained constant altitude and speed. Minutes later, an unidentified person entered the cockpit and sat in the captain's seat. The jet began a descent, with the F-16s keeping escort. At 12:05 p.m., the Boeing abruptly lost altitude and collided into mountains in Grammatikos, a village 30 kilometers north of the Athens airport, killing all 121 occupants. Investigations revealed that the Boeing 737 suffered a nearly imperceptible depressurization. As the aircraft gained altitude, the air in its cabin became increasingly rarefied. The air conditioning problem reported by the pilots was related to this. The air became so rarefied that the occupants gradually lost consciousness. Except for the person who entered the cockpit, later identified as one of the flight attendants, all the occupants of the Helios 737 died slowly from asphyxiation. The Boeing 737 flew almost all the time on autopilot until the flight attendant, with a few hours of flight time as a private pilot, took control without being able to control it. A failure in the pressurization system, more common than one might imagine, could have been the cause of the disappearance of flight RG-967. A slow and gradual depressurization may have incapacitated the 6 crew members of the aircraft. The crew members of flight RG-967 would have fainted and minutes later died from asphyxiation. The aircraft then would have flown on autopilot until it ran out of fuel, plunging into some point of the Pacific Ocean. If a failure like this was the cause of the disappearance of RG-967, it may have disappeared thousands of miles from the location where the searches were concentrated. It's worth remembering that the searches were focused on an expanded area from the last point of contact between the captain and ground control. This explains why nothing was found, despite the work of dozens of vessels and aircraft from the Japanese and American navies. After 8 days, during which up to 70 ships and airplanes were used simultaneously, the searches were definitively called off. Many assumptions have been made over the years about the disappearance of RG-967. From a hijacking by an unidentified flying object to the possibility of the aircraft being shot down or hijacked by the former Soviet Union. The justification for this theory lay in the belief that, in addition to the works of Manabu Mabe, There was also a disassembled MiG-25 from the Soviet Air Force, which had defected from the Sakharovka base and landed at Hokkaido Airport in 1976. The fighter jet was supposedly being taken to the United States. This information is incorrect because the Americans, upon learning of the defection of Lieutenant Viktor Ivanovich Belenko, the pilot of the MiG-25, sent a technical team to Hokkaido Airport. There, they completely dismantled the fighter jet, subjecting its components to a detailed analysis. At the end of the process, the Americans placed all the pieces in a container and sent it back to the Soviet Union. And so, the mystery of Flight RG-967 remains. A story that makes us reflect on the limits of technology, the fragility of life, and the enigmas that nature still imposes on us. And you? What do you think happened? Leave your opinion in the comments. Before you go, if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any fascinating stories, and share this video with your friends who also love mysteries.